Suicide rates are serious. On today's show, we'll be talking about suicide and turning pain into purpose. We'll be joined by Chris and Martha Thomas, founders of the Defensive Line. You will not want to miss this, as they will talk about their story, the issues of suicide, and about what you and I can do. For joining me today. I'm Madelyn Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about unlocking the resilient leader in you. The leading cause of death for teens and young adults ages 10 to 34 is unintentional injuries or accidents, motor vehicle crashes, falls, drowning. The second leading cause of death for those precious children, and I'm sorry, but 10-year-olds to me are children. They are not young adults. The second leading cause of death for these precious children is suicide. Overall, 20% of high school students reported having seriously considered suicide in the past year, and almost half of them attempted it. Although I have mentioned only statistics about young people, suicide touches every age, as we've seen with the recent suicide of John Brenkus, host of Sports Science, who died at 53. Whenever I read the statistics about suicide, I am always shocked and saddened. We're going to talk about this, what is being done, and what all of us, you and me, can do about it. And if you think suicide doesn't touch you, think again. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're listening to Unlocked, and I'm your host, Madelyn Blair. And we're talking about suicide. And it's time to bring on my remarkable guests. I met Chris and Martha by phone and realized immediately I had made a good choice to seek them out to be on Unlocked. In fact, I was laughing at about the 2-minute mark, and it was laughter of joy. Martha Thomas, Christopher Thomas, with their son Solomon, joined in creating the Defensive Line, founded to honor their daughter Ella, an organization dedicated to addressing the mental health issues surrounding suicide and to carry a message of hope and help to other at-risk young people.
I would prefer to be anywhere else right now, but talking about my daughter dying by suicide. When you're given a mess, create a message. And so we want to create a message where no other family, no other husband, wife, brother, sister, friend goes through the pain that we've gone through of losing someone.
We've turned our pain into purpose. It doesn't mean that our pain goes away. It means that our heart has grown bigger around that pain.
It's bigger than Ella. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than this whole room. What does suicide prevention mean to you? For us, it's hope.
This is preventable. There is hope in helping this generation of young youth stay here, stay on this earth, understand that's okay to not be okay.
The more we talk about it, the more we communicate about it, the more we connect about it, the more progress we will make.
We don't want to pretend to have all the answers because clearly we wouldn't be here if we had the answers. But one thing we do know is if you take action, if you do something, if you follow the D lines, we can each help to to save lives.
Martha Thomas brings more than 30 years as an educator to the defensive line, where she serves as Chief Education Officer. She left teaching in 2022 to work full-time with the defensive line, where she continues to educate through its suicide prevention workshops and D-Lines training. Her insight of the realities of the classroom provides an understanding of what teachers are faced with every day. An extraordinary ability to connect and understand the needs of those who work with the young people so vulnerable to the pain of coping with today's world. She has led programming partnerships in Dallas, Fort Worth, Clark County, Baylor University, and Stanford University. She has spoken at Mental Health America, Neuroscience Education Institute Congress, and United Healthcare Town Hall. She is a respected voice in the field of mental health, a popular podcast guest, an inspiring keynote speaker, and the true north of the defensive line organization. I was impressed that here was someone so qualified for the work that she does. And then I read that she believes that connection is our greatest source of strength together. Now, when I read that about Martha, I knew I had to meet her. You see, connection, or sometimes called relationship or social support, is primary to resilience. Chris Thomas has yet to meet a stranger. During his 30-plus years in corporate management of consumer goods and products, both domestically and internationally, Chris has literally made thousands of friends through his innate ability to connect with and care for others. People are put at ease by his big laugh and zest for life, and by his ability to communicate a message of positivity and hope. A gifted college athlete, Chris played an integral role in coaching and developing the athletic achievements of their children, Ella and Solomon. Chris often jokes that as Solomon's dad, he had the rare privilege of raising his own favorite NFL player. And no player has a more enthusiastic father in the stands. Chris's passion for suicide prevention programming developed by the defensive line is only surpassed by his insistence that people of color are provided mental health care on an equitable basis. His lived experience helps train others on recognizing and reacting appropriately to microaggressions when they occur. This level of nuanced discussions makes for a deeply meaningful and purposeful presentation. Today, he's a member of the boards of directors of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, as well as Touched by Suicide. He is a board member of AFSP's Project 2025 and College of Worcester Ad Hoc Alumni Trustee. And he is the CEO of the Defensive Line. Together, Martha and Chris serve as faculty members of American Academy of Pediatrics, ECHO program, and have appeared on the NFL Network, ESPN, and CNN. Chris says something about barbecuing the world's best ribs. Martha is a marathoner, gardener, and a huge football fan, especially of the New York Jets. Last but not least, the Thomas family were honored to receive the 2019 AFSP Lifesaver Award. Martha and Chris, welcome to Unlocked.
Thank you so much for having us, Madelyn.
Oh, you are so welcome. You are so welcome. I have to ask that opening question, which is, why have you decided to work in such a difficult field? And I'm going to let the two of you decide who wants to answer.
We We're asked to speak over and over again. With Solomon playing in the NFL, Ella died after his rookie year. And by September, we were recording a segment for ESPN for Monday Night Football. And we just kept going. We've been on CNN, we've been on the NFL Network, and in the New York Times. And so it felt like we almost had a responsibility to do something with this that impacted people in a way that could help them with their own families, their own coworkers, their own teachers, students at school.
Yeah. I think also after experiencing unimaginable pain, our thought was, how can we help others not go through what we've gone through? And one of the things we've learned over the last 8 years plus is just how preventable suicide is, in particular if you give people the right resources, environments, and conditions. And we're trying to find a way to turn a mess into a message.
I don't even want to ask you to expand unless you feel comfortable. But the idea of losing a child, it's just sitting here thinking about it, contemplating it, touches me deeply. But speaking about the fact that it is such a deep topic and so difficult, and your work is so important, I think that I know that my audience stays with me almost through the entire show, but I still want to make sure that they find out immediately how to get in touch with you, what's your website address, all those things. And then we'll get into the topic.
Our website is thedefensiveline.org. We have info email on there that people can reach out to. And we have most of our talks we've done are linked there, a lot of media that we've done, and just good things about us.
And we're also on LinkedIn at The Defensive Line, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and about to launch in TikTok as well.
Great. I don't think I've ever started with that kind of a question, but I felt it was really important that people immediately know if this is a topic in your life, there's nothing that gets in the way for you to get that information.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. One of the lines that is on your website somewhere, it says, turning pain into purpose. Talk about that.
It felt, after Ella died, everything felt like it was a waste. Her life was a waste. Not that her life was a waste. Losing her was such a waste. And we kept, like I said, being asked to speak. How could we figure out a way to make something horrible, such incredible loss, somewhat meaningful? And not that we can cover up our pain with purpose or meaning, but we can make it matter.
So often that is the genesis of really amazing things in this world. It comes out of our pain, that we don't want other people to suffer it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your efforts, because I know they're great. But one of the first questions that comes to my mind is, we often talk about mental health separately from physical health. But from what I understand, they are deeply connected. How do you think about that relationship, and why is it important to treat mental health as an essential part of overall well-being?
One of the things that we've learned straight away when we got into this work, Dr. David Satcher talked about, there's no health unless you have mental health. And we need to find a way to understand that it's really whole health. It's not just mental, it's not just physical, it's not just spiritual or emotional, it's all of those elements. It's 4 legs of a stool, and you need all 4 of them to be balanced to have a productive, enthusiastic life. And so one of the things we've always been amazed at is, as we go talk to coaches and parents, that we need to find a way to create parity when we do talk about mental and physical health. They're both equally important when you just look at those 2 elements only. And you need to find a way to make sure you are always asking about not just how they're doing physically, but also how they're doing mentally. As you exercise your muscles, you got to exercise your brain. And one of the things that Martha says all the time when we're in our workshop is if your daughter or your son or your spouse or your friend had twisted their ankle, you would ask them how their ankle is doing. The same needs to be true as we're talking about people's mental health and mental wellness. How are you doing today? How are you really doing today? And then have discussions about why you may not feel up to par, why you might feel frustrated or irritated or worried. Just having those discussions and not sweep them under the rug, because if you don't address the feeling that's causing you pain, you're not going to get resolution.
I'm really struck by that. We often, and I will say that from, I'll call it an American perspective, in our social culture, we ask people, how you doing today? But that's it. We don't pursue it. We just hope they come back and say, oh, I'm fine. I'm going to have to think about that now and how I ask that question. And am I willing to press? And am I willing then to also listen if they say that they have some difficulty?
And listen compassionately.
Yes.
I'll share a quick story from our board member. I know Martha's got a story that she can share that happened with Solomon when he was on the Niners. We have a board member that talked about he lost someone close to his life to suicide. And he talked about how it was important for him to start asking the question, as you ask, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And then pausing and being uncomfortable in the silence if it takes them a minute or two to respond, and realize you don't have to solve the problem. You can just sit there and listen compassionately and just let them get it out.
And there's a story in there, Martha.
Solomon talked about when he went, the year after Ella died, he went back to the Niners and he wasn't in a good place. And he said, another teammate asked him one day, how are you doing? And he was like, man, I'm fine, whatever. And he goes, no, Solomon, like, how are you really doing? And he said he burst into tears.
Yeah.
So how just being that person that's actually willing to listen is so important. And it means not trying to fix someone. Here's what you need to do. Leave that out.
Yeah.
Maybe say, I hear you, but not try to fix everything. I think that's really important, that compassionate listening.
I love that story because I can literally feel that moment when he realized this person wants to know. They've acknowledged that I exist, that I might have difficulty. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm definitely going to change how I ask people how they are. No question. Because sometimes it's nothing. It's just a minor thing in their life. But to have somebody know that they care, that's really good.
Absolutely.
Well, you also talk about community-based suicide prevention. It's been under-resourced. Oftentimes, people don't even want to talk about it in their communities.
Right.
How can we assure it really can be formed and it meets people where they are?
I think community is where we start. It's got to be, because we can't all go to a clinician. They're not enough. And some people don't have the resources to go. So how do we make it so that we as a community become the go-to place? This is the definition, I think, of public health. Where can we make that difference? And we can all make a difference easily by simply being willing to talk about it, by asking the hard questions, the hard and direct questions, by knowing what some resources are, by knowing about 988 and 741-741 as not just crisis numbers, but mental health resource numbers, a place to go and a place to start.
741-741?
That's the crisis text line. A lot of younger people especially prefer to text, or if you're in a dorm room, you don't maybe want to get on a call, or at work, you might not have a quiet place to be able to call. You can text 988, but you can also text 741-741.
Yeah.
Mm.
And to Martha's point about our communities don't have enough resources, the last time the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention did research on this, it was in 2022, and it showed that 73% of communities do not have enough mental health resources. So that's where community is important. As Martha said, friends getting together, colleagues getting together, whether it's at church, whether it's at school, whether it's at sports clubs, whether it's at the library, whatever it is, because that's what really drives connectivity is having discussion, feeling like someone belongs to a particular group or community or purpose. And that's just so important. That's one reason why when we do our trainings, we try to find a way to not only go into schools, but also go into like sports clubs, churches, all those things. So we're working the whole community and we're talking about resources. We're talking about the warning signs. We're talking about how to create mentally healthy environments. We're talking about the continuum of care, all those things that help people understand that there is an issue so they could become aware of it. But then also, here are some tools and resources, like Martha just mentioned, that you can use to help your loved one, help yourself, help your schoolmate, your teammate, whatever.
I picked up particularly on that library. Our libraries, I actually think they are one of the finest resources in America. They're the free public library, and librarians are fabulous.
Mm.
They're fabulous people because they understand they're there to help you find what you want to know. And some libraries are moving out into different areas besides books and media and that sort of thing. And you're
Mhm.
right, this would be a fabulous place to be able to have a resource immediately there. Also, I noticed that there's some talk in the media about some communities recognizing that there are situations when police are an inappropriate
Mm.
intervention, but it's the only intervention we know how to bring in. Do you have any experience on that and what communities are bringing into the resource mix for such situations?
The only thing that I'm aware of is just how, when we've done our work with 988, how that when we were learning about it from Vibrant and Mental Health America, how that there are trained mental health professionals that will be dealing with it because unfortunately the police are not trained. And one of the things that we learned in our training with 988 was how you could use them before there's a crisis because 90% of their calls are for people who aren't in crisis, people who call it, like Martha mentioned before, call ahead of time to say, hey, I've got a friend or brother or sister or church member that is going through some issues. How do I have a conversation with them? Or sometimes as we're in our training, we talk about if you're with somebody and you feel that there's a need to do something immediately after you've listened compassionately, is calling 988 or someone with that person. And but that's the we've learned is that that is the right resource to use versus having a police person come in to try to deal with a mental health crisis because they're just not trained for it. Now, some mobile health crisis services or centers are. There are some select cities across the U.S. that are using those services, and we're seeing a reduction in police violence and police creating or committing crimes against people who are mentally ill. But don't have a lot of great knowledge on that, but we do know the importance of leveraging 988 instead of 911 in mental health crisis.
Ah, okay. I
There,
think, go
there
ahead.
are some police departments who now bring along someone with a mental, if they're told it's a mental health
Mhm.
issue, that they have someone who is trained that they bring along, but that's not everywhere. And so if you need to call 911, please let them know it's a mental health issue.
I, as we're talking about this, I'm remembering an interview I had one time. I was writing a book on how adults bring fresh knowledge into their lives. This was about
Mm.
15 years ago. And I was interviewing people all over the world, all different socioeconomic levels. And I interviewed this one person who said, he said, I'm the survivor of suicide. And it was fascinating. I thought to myself, wow, somebody caught him in time. And it turned out this man, having attempted suicide, woke up and realized he needed to do something purpose. He went to purpose.
Mm,
This business of pain and purpose leads to purpose. And he became a master carpenter,
mm,
and he does amazing things with wood
mm,
but there he was in London, so he had a different set of support than we have here in this country. He literally had a place that he went to, and
mm.
they had different things for him to learn, like there was a wood shop and et cetera, et cetera. So there, I just think it's amazing when people have that moment and you can get them through. There could be really amazing moments after that because they changed their lives.
Absolutely. Another part of the pain to purpose piece that I didn't think of initially when you asked the question was one of the reasons why Martha and I also like sharing our story is that we think our story has relevance across race. And one of the things that, when Ella died by suicide, I didn't think Black people died by suicide. And unfortunately, I'm not the exception. Whether it's Latino, whether it's Native American or African American, a lot of those people in those races see it as taboo, see it as it's not an issue within their race. And after we did more analysis and understanding of it, we're finding that the increase of suicide is higher amongst people of color, is up 54% since 2008, and is down 17% for the general population. So it's important that we go and share our story. We talk about our pain because our pain is happening across a variety of different areas. And if we talk about it, the more people can become aware that it is an issue and that it is something that can be prevented. And here are some of the tools that exist within your community to help you with your brother, your sister, your child, your student athlete. So that's one of the things that we've found to be quite amazing is the opening up of people across races that talk about their pain, that talk about their mental health issues, and that talk about how they didn't think it was okay to talk about, that they felt like they had to put their head in the sand. Us sharing our story says, you know what, it is okay to talk about it.
Before we started our recording, you and I talked about the fact that I've been involved with storytelling for a long time. And one of the things that our mutual friend Seth Kahn and I did was run sessions where we had people tell personal stories. It was always amazing when you listen to the stories around the circle, how, yes, you learned about their story, but what really happened to me was that people began to connect with those other people. Oh, you did that? Oh, but yeah, that happened to me. And suddenly there's this incredible connection that's being made. And my sense is that would happen in this kind of situation that we're talking about.
Yes.
We were doing a workshop for the coaches at a major university, sporting university in the country. And at the end of the workshop, one of the coaches came up to me, he was the head basketball coach, and he said, my coaches and I looked at each other during the workshop and said, we could be you. Wow. We could be you. And thanked us for being there and thanked us for sharing and helped to teach them what we know, what we've learned along the way. But I think that is the power of storytelling. We get to pull each other in to our stories. We get pulled into other stories, and that helps us. It's why we read books, right? Like we get to experience things from other people's perspectives that we wouldn't have if we didn't listen to other stories.
I have to tell you, this is in that same research that I told you about. I was once interviewing a management consultant, really bright guy. He knew all the new ideas on management, et cetera. I said, how do you do it? There's 100 of books every year published in this topic, at least. And he said, oh, I don't read management books. I said, you don't? I said, what do you read? He said, I read good novels. And it goes to exactly your point, that Martha, that we really do learn from reading stories, especially, I shouldn't say that, but I say especially good stories. Not read from any story. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. I was watching one of your episodes, and I think it was TJ Elliott and Lauren something, but you guys were talking about story.
Lauren Nimi. Yeah.
And you talked about, there was a quote, stories that lift us out of our silt of our own experience, I think
Yes.
it was. And I think as we share our story, we lift up the silt of how there are things that we can do as parents, as fathers, as just teachers, coaches, that help realize that somebody may need help. And Martha just shared the one story that took place at one of the universities. It seems every time we do our training and share our story, there's an example of a coach or a student athlete sharing, you know what, because of your story and because of the resources you shared, I knew that this person was at risk. I knew how to give them the help. And this has happened across almost every time we've done one of our workshops or our keynotes. And or someone say, hey, I realize now that my daughter needs help. Martha, you got to share the story of the one training we did in our hometown where the teacher followed our D-line's advice.
She went home and she asked her son, "Are you thinking of suicide?" And he said yes. And he had a plan, and they were able to get him mental health help and actually institutionalize him. And we saw her, it was almost a year later, and she told us this story. She said, "Because of you, I went home and I asked my son, and he answered that." And she said, "He's not well. He's in and out of institutions." She said, she grabbed me and she goes, "But he's still here."
He's still here. Yeah. Makes a huge difference too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the other thing, Martha, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's like after we were sitting with our pain and our grief, Martha recognized when she went back to school, she was suicide prevention trained. So she said she came up with this D lines that helped this other teacher save her son's life. But instead of holding that in, we want to share it so that we can continue to make a difference and have a positive impact, not only in our community, but across the country, across the globe, wherever it makes sense. Because I can't remember if it was this discussion we had before he came on or previous Zoom podcast Martha and I had interview we had with University of California, how this impacts every race.
Yeah.
Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Rich or poor, doesn't matter. It impacts everybody.
Yeah.
And so we got to find a way to work it together.
Yeah. I feel just that I have to digress just a little bit. A couple of things. One, I want to find out why this thing is called the defensive line. Mm-hmm. Number two, I'm not a football fan. I'll admit it. So I want to know about that. And number two, I want to know what you did for your children to raise them to be athletes. Okay. I know that's not of the subject, but
no,
it is of the subject.
There's a story behind it. Martha, you want to go ahead?
So the defensive line, Solomon is a defensive lineman, but we are defenders of life. We keep trying to find ways for people to stay and be here and defend what we see as this life that isn't always easy, but hopefully is always hopeful.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is we want to defend against some of the myths and stereotypes that exist out there on mental health and suicide. One of them being that Black people don't die by suicide. That's a myth. We talk about one of the things that we do in our workshop is it's important for you to understand if someone dies by suicide, it's die by suicide, not commit suicide. Mm-hmm. The reason is you don't commit cancer, you don't commit lung cancer or lung disease or blood disease. Mm-hmm. You die by cancer. You die by suicide. 80 to 90% of people die by suicide have a diagnosable mental health condition. So it's die by plus commit connotes it's a crime, and it's not a crime. So that's an important piece.
And it adds to the stigma.
Yes. And the other thing, we didn't want to call it Ella's story. We called the defensive line, as Martha so said.
I was really mad about that, by the way. Ella would have loved for it to be Ella's story.
That's true. That's true. That is so
I
true.
love it.
Oh my God. Oh
that could be the subtitle.
Yeah. One reason why they were in the sports, to answer your second part of the question, is when the kids were 4 and 2, we moved to Australia. And Australia is a sports mad society. So they learned to
Yes, they
swim,
are.
soccer, everything is sports related there. And so they loved all of that and just carried over. And plus, Martha and I were big into not having our kids inside. We wanted them to play with others, play with themselves, play, just get outside and just do activity. So whether it was swimming, basketball, track, tennis, they were out there doing something. And although we didn't know at the time that it was mental and physical kind of development, it turned out well. Plus, Martha and I are both athletes. She ran track. I played basketball. She was also in the marching band, so she knew music. So we knew that we wanted to make sure there were some extracurricular parts of their life, because that's the way you just meet people. That's the way you figure out life's problems, how you solve things with people. And you're not going to do it by sitting at home playing a video game.
That's for sure. I'm sitting here thinking, how cool it would be to have that many sports in your life. I grew up on a farm.
Oh,
So you were, let me tell you, you were outside, number one.
yep.
Number two, you always had something to do. You may not have liked it, but you had something to do.
Amen. Amen.
So in a way, you just fell into the fact that Solomon was a really talented young man and got into sports early. Oh, fabulous.
The kids, they had excellent swim coaches in Australia. Swimming's a big thing. They have to pass a certain level of swimming at school. We lived close to the water. But then for Solomon, when we moved to Texas, he wasn't about the sports yet. And when he went into middle school, he couldn't even run a mile. He had asthma. He was a little heavy. He really struggled. And then puberty was a gift. So truly, he was a late bloomer into the sports. So we put him in football so he'd meet other kids. Because we wanted him to be a football player.
Nope.
No.
You were prescient.
We don't get to pick what our kids fall in love with.
No,
But the good thing,
absolutely.
he fell in love with it, though. We didn't force it on him.
Isn't that interesting?
His first sport that he tried out for was basketball. He got cut, didn't make the team. But you know what that did to him is, talk about resilience. He said, you know what? I'm going to work out on my own. I'm going to figure out a way to make the team next year. And we didn't force it on him. He wanted to go out there, learn how to dribble better, shoot better, jump better. And he did all of it on his own. We helped him when he asked for help, obviously. But yeah, is in him. He wanted to get better, self-motivated.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. And I feel, again, you need to just stop me if I get too close. But I'm curious, what was the point at which Ella tended to lose her joie de vivre?
There were some spots in high school. She was very ADD, but also performed well in school and wasn't a behavior problem. They had her tested at a place in New York City, and they were like, oh, she's ADD. But when we moved to Texas, they said, we don't take that test. Yeah, she's ADD, but there's not enough of a gap, behavior or performance, so we don't have any services for her. And so that, as she got older, got into high school, it was harder and hard. Her school was harder for her. And she worked hard and got frustrated. And that was hard. She kept playing basketball. She played basketball all through high school. And the girls got the court at 5:30 a.m. or something. She was up every morning getting herself to school. But that was hard. School wasn't easy, and she knew it and would get very frustrated by it.
Yeah. And it doesn't help to be slightly different.
The race factor played a huge element in the amount of pain she was going through. Here, we live in Capel, but she called it Cop Hell, because she was constantly stopped, pulled over by the police. When she went to University of Arkansas, she experienced being pulled over quite a few times there on campus, but also on the state highway. It's just not coincidental that it happened all the time. The number of times I was pulled over, it was very similar to things she went through. And then I think the other piece that caused her so much pain was when she was at university, she was unfortunately sexually assaulted. And that created a tremendous amount of pain. And at the time, we didn't know that had a direct link with suicide ideation. And obviously she was getting help. She was going to a therapist, and Martha had made sure she was on the right meds and everything. But one of the things we've learned in this journey is mental health and suicide is that people take their life because they were in so much pain. They don't want to die. They just want to end the pain. And the accumulation of all of that and being in an abusive relationship, those are all elements that played a role in her life.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's difficult. My work in resilience highlights the value of having social support in order to sustain your resilience. We talked a little bit about that. You talk about supporting youth through connection and representation. Talk more about those two words, connection and representation.
So I think with connection, really making sure we're connecting with people, we're connecting with each other. Like not just asking, hey, how you doing? When expecting everyone to say fine, which by the way, fine is not an emotion. But so don't accept it. If someone says they're fine, don't accept that. But letting people know that we're open for conversation. And you can't always get people to talk or to have a heavy talk, but you can let people know that you're there and that you are someone to connect with.
Yeah. And when I think of representation, I think of belonging and making sure people feel that they are part of something bigger than themselves, that they're not excluded, that they don't feel othered or invisible. One of the things we do in our workshop, we talk about the importance of how bias, everyone has bias. And it's not just race and gender.
Right.
There's confirmation bias, there's halo bias, there's all types of bias. Age bias, weight, there's all these things. And it's important that you recognize it, because if your bias causes someone to be excluded, someone to feel invisible, there's nothing worse than, as I think back on the times of my life that were the most painful, it's when I felt I was invisible.
Yes.
Whether it was corporate, whether it was a coach not seeing me, whether it was part of being in a community where people didn't feel I was valued, there's nothing worse I felt than being invisible. And so we got to find a way to make sure people feel like they belong as a part of something that will help them grow, help their family grow, help the community grow. Those are some key things as I think about representation, is making sure people feel like they belong to something.
Right. The kinds of things we're talking about take time to change attitudes. You talk about the long game of change. In your experience with working with people in your workshops, what is this? How long does it take for people to catch on what it is and really begin to change?
I think it could be immediate for example, our workshops are like our DALLIANCE workshop. I mean, DALLIANCE stands for D is don't ignore your gut, L is listen for the signs, I is interact the person who's a concern, N is name the concern, E is evidence the concern, and S is create a safe, supportive environment. In our DALLIANCE workshop, we've done about 80 of them over the last couple of years, training about 4,000 adults, hitting about 300,000 youth that have been impacted by these trainings. And we're seeing immediate results in people being A, recognize the signs, B, being able to put together an action plan. One of the things that we learned from Martha's experience is, and I'll let her share it, but the teachers and coaches are given all these drills about to be prepared for something, fire drill, tornado drill. Those things may not happen. 1 out of 4 kids have a mental health condition.
Yeah.
They're guaranteed to have somebody who's going to have a mental health crisis. So they 98% of the people who attend our workshop walk away with an action plan. So we're seeing immediate kind of results there. And then even within the communities, like Martha mentioned, a year later after talking to a teacher, that teacher being able to, when we were at university here locally, to coach, being able to recognize that the student athlete was in trouble and getting them the help they need. We're seeing immediate results, but we also know that it's important to lay down and put together partnerships across different communities so that we can create long-term success, so that we're creating, change as it relates to legislations to make sure that suicide prevention training is funded and mandated, to make sure that we have the right screeners in place so that teachers and coaches and parents can recognize the warning signs, to make sure that we have the right mental health training for our community. So those are some things that take longer term effect, but by having the discussions now, we're starting to put plans in place to make it happen.
You went through the D line, D for something, L, etc. Would you say that again?
Martha?
D is don't ignore your gut.
Don't ignore your gut.
So that innate feeling we all get when something is off, that we push away. A lot of times it's part of the fight or flight reaction. L is listen for the signs.
Okay.
So know the warning signs for suicide, but know that any change in behavior could be a risk. I is interact. That's ask questions. Even use the warning signs as a place to start. Use a feelings wheel. How do you really feel? Look at this feelings wheel. Where does your feeling fit on here? Name your concern. What is wrong? What is different? What is the change in behavior? Evidence your concern. So specifically for leaders of young people, what are you seeing that's different? That's a change. What is your concern? And ask us create a safe and supportive environment. Like Chris said about the coach that helped the student also knew that his coach had been through a training. The student knew that his coach could be a resource and was able to call him.
Yeah. Thank you. That really lays it out beautifully. And I love the fact that fine is not an emotion.
There's a theme here too. The defensive line, D lines.
Yes, I'm catching it.
I don't know what we've done.
Struck me.
Ballerina.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Chris.
So I don't know what we've done. Solomon was a ballerina, so I'm glad he plays football.
We're at the point where I normally would thank my guests and let you go, but I want to invite you to join me on Grounds for Thought. That's my ending segment, because you've given me so many rich ideas. I want to make sure people, when they watch this show, can say, okay, I didn't go to the workshop, but I've got these things that I can do. So with your permission, we'll shift over. All right. Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. Welcome back. And I'm really so thankful that both Chris and Martha have agreed that they're going to give you some really specific ideas on how to observe and know when suicide may be possible or somebody's thinking about it and what to do. So let me turn it over to you, Martha and Chris, and you just bug me when you're done.
I would propose that we all have mental health conversations much more freely as a part of suicide prevention. But simply, and I've shared this with several people, but my friend group is the one who has shared with me that this was game-changing for them. So rather than saying, I am angry, I feel angry. I am frustrated. I am not my frustrations. I feel frustrated. Our feelings are fleeting and our feelings change. And if we can understand that, that is one of the guarantees of our feelings, is that they're going to change and that they are not who we are. That can change our conversations. I said it recently when we were doing a panel, and someone texted me, got my phone number and texted and said, I was able to tell my daughter that. And we were able to have a conversation about mental health. And I didn't think that was going to be that powerful of a thing, but it is. We are not our feelings. Our feelings change. And that's a good place to start with being able to talk about our feelings.
I'm very curious, though, about how do I recognize that somebody might be on the edge, so to speak?
That's a really good question. And that's one of the things when we do our workshop, and when we talk about the D lines under the L, listen for the signs, we walk through a very informative and engaging chart that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention created. We didn't know it existed before Ella died by suicide, but really recognizes talk, mood, behavior, warning signs. And they're just a guide. They're not an end all to be all. Talk is the person talking about being a burden to others, about killing themselves, feeling trapped, having reasons not to live. Those are some of the talk behavior elements. From a mood, are they depressed? Are they losing interest in things that bring them joy? Are they more rageful? Are they humiliated or more irritable? So that's a mood piece. And from a behavior perspective, increased use of alcohol or drugs. Are they sleeping more, sleeping less, eating more, eating less? Are they being more aggressive? Are they acting recklessly? Are they giving away prized possessions? And those are the talk, mood, behavior pieces. But as Martha said, what's really important is our significant change in behavior. And that's typically a tipping point that says, you know what? When that happens, that's when you recognize the warning signs. That's when you reach out for help. That's 988, 711, using some other local resource that exists. One of the things we've learned in doing this work is that every campus has a local campus resource. And for every parent that drops their kid off to school, make sure you know what that resource is. And you know what the protocol is for non-urgent as well as urgent medical behaviors. But you reach out for help. There is a ton of help. That's one reason why we call ourselves the defensive line, is we want to defend against life and use the resources that exist. And then you engage with the person. Make sure they're getting the support they need. Distract them from their feelings of pain and angst. And that could be, like Martha said before, sitting down and calling 988 together. And then after that, you develop a healthy coping solution. And then you create a safe, supportive environment. Those are the things that we have found to be super successful and helpful. One of the things we always do when we leave a place is we share with them a resource card that has all the local resources, national resources, because there's enough support out there. We just got to get people, we got to be the bridge, get them to what they need.
Are they resources that I could post on my website so that people can ask for them? I can send them?
We'll send you this card that has the talk, mood, behavior, the resources,
okay,
all the things that we just talked about in the D lines. Absolutely.
All right. That we will do. This is so helpful to me as I'm listening. These are things I truly can do. Has somebody's behavior changed? Recognizing that emotions are ephemeral, they change. But the thing about the change in behavior, radical change in behavior, and giving things away, really helpful to me. Yes. Thank you so much. Martha and Chris, you are amazing. I so appreciate your time and your energy and all that you have shared today. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. You
are so welcome. Wow. That was truly, truly amazing. I'm really moved by their willingness to share and their continued work to save and defend life. I want to thank you for joining me today. I'll have a link on the show notes in YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, speaking of which, please click the like button. And of course, subscribe, because it helps me, of course, but it also helps people who are trying to find this information. I'm Madelyn Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you unlock the resilient leader in you.